Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. This is a private session that we're doing with the highest scores from the Elastic Contributor Program. Shay, thank you so much for this opportunity, for taking your time to review those questions and be this close to the community members. I so appreciate your time and this opportunity to be this close with you. And we can start whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Hi, everybody. I think it's the first time that we're doing something like that. So welcome, everybody. Excited to have you. Yeah. I forgot that webinar doesn't show video. I was hoping to see attendees, but like maybe next time we could just do a regular Zoom meeting or something, so I get a chance to see faces.
Yeah, we have someone from Punta Arenas saying hello. And
cool.
yeah. Okay, I'll start reading the questions and then we can take from there. So the Elastic Stack has been providing many amazing capabilities to the security community with its ability to execute and flexibility to do so. Right now, I believe that the feature holding many back from full adoption of the Elastic Stack for security is the free use of the webhooks. Would you carefully consider opening up the ability to execute webhooks for detection rules and case management to be included with the basic license?
First of all, it's exciting to see the usage of our security product, and obviously we're big believers in having a free version of our product, especially on-prem, and obviously the code is open. I think the short answer is yes. So it's great to have the feedback. I need to go and talk to the team and try to learn a bit more about what does it mean. But yeah, I'll raise it with the team and see if it makes sense. Especially if there's like consistent feedback that this is this prevents people from using us significantly more on the free aspect of Elastic Security. Our goal is for our free distribution to be prevalent and as complete as possible, obviously. So if that's something that is missing, then I'd love to, I'll take it back to the security team and talk to them about it.
Thanks. The recent impacts of ChatGPT on the world has made everyone pay more attention to development of LLMs, large language models. This may bring about a completely different form of a changing data search and aggregation for people. What would be Elastic Response's strategy for this aspect?
Yeah, so first of all, it's been both amazing and terrifying at the same time, I guess, to see the progress that is going on with, especially with OpenAI, ChatGPT 3.5 and 4, and I think it caught several of us a bit by surprise about how quickly this has progressed. I think, at least from Elastic's perspective, there's a few ways that I like to think about it. I think the first part is we've been building for the last couple of years Elasticsearch capabilities in this area, from contributing vector search capabilities into Apache Lucene and using it in Elasticsearch, the ability to import models from Hugging Face and transformers and running them in Elasticsearch using PyTorch. The ability to use embeddings at both ingestion time and at search time, using these transformers or models. So there is, from our perspective at least, we would love for Elasticsearch and Apache Lucene to play a role in what is, to a degree, search, right? In fact, the database is very naturally fits into search technology. The same way that we have played in things like, I don't know, inverted indexes and TF-IDF ranking systems and BM25 and things on those lines. And we're making significant investments there, and we have. Now, I think somewhere along the ways, we kind of like haven't spoke about it as much. So we we are going to try to talk about it even more around what we've been doing and help educate our community and the rest of the team members around it. That's like as a foundational piece, right? It's like if you in your company want to do something in this like new age of transformers and embeddings and large language models and things and vector databases and things along those lines, I think there's a huge benefit for people that already know and like Elasticsearch and Apache Lucene and have invested so much in learning how they work to progress and get like to that next step using these building blocks. I think, by the way, one of the things that we're also trying to really focus on is that it's keep that amazing capability of both Lucene and Elasticsearch, that you can combine multiple data structures together and make use of them. For example, the ability, we're working very hard to allow to have the ability to filter the vector database data that you have in Apache Lucene that allows you to train a model once and then filter based on what you have. That's a very tough problem, things along those lines. Beyond that, like on top of Elasticsearch as a core building block, we want to use these models to help the experiences that our users have. So for example, one thing that I think we'll start to see quite a lot is something that I think GitHub initiated, which is the concept of co-pilots. So I'm trying to write code and there's almost like a co-pilot. So someone that, sits behind me and help me write better code. So if you think about the solutions that we have at Elastic, if I'm a threat hunter and I'm trying to find threats, if I get an alert, if there's a case being opened, can we use various implementations of LLMs, whether they are provided by OpenAI or Google Bard or something along those lines, Google Bard, or whether they're being run by Elasticsearch or whether they're a combination of them. So allow people to use that information to help co-pilots, help, for example, understand a bit more about the context of the threat that you have, understand a bit more about the nature of the performance bottleneck that you have in your monitoring, in your logs or in your application performance monitoring, understand the being able to ask questions in workplace search when you search across documents and you get a few hits or things along those lines. I think from there, from co-piloting, there's also somewhere in the middle, if you will, which is what you can do now with LLMs, especially ones that have been, require significant training that not everybody can do, is that you can provide them with context. So for example, I'm using a query in Elasticsearch, and obviously what we do well is the ability to return relevant information, get the 1,000 events or documents or messages that are relevant to what I'm trying to find, and use that as context. So take that, analyze it, and use it as context to an LLM. And then start to have a chat session with that LLM with that context in mind. That helps, for example, reduce the challenge of what is called hallucinations, right? Like the fact that the LLM kind of like, or ChatGPT or the GPT system kind of like run away from you. So you can give it more context about what you do, how you work, the information that you're trying to work with, and then confine it to that context. I think the last part is how can you, for example, take an existing LLM, because you can kind of like, and as I think as this technology matures, you can layer these transformers on top of each other. So how can you take your data and, for example, train it and import it into something like Elastic, and then being able to use that as well to have almost like a chat interface. I'm using chat interface, but it might be a different interface to have a similar experience that you have with ChatGPT, just on your, all of your security data that you've taken and put into Elasticsearch or something along those lines. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there for a system like Elastic at many different levels. I think that's the exciting part for us to help progress and make sure that our users are successful with this like fast pacing and fast moving area. I think the thing that makes us unique is the fact that we kind of like, we're not only do Copilot like I don't know, other security vendors or observability vendors, because we can also run an LLM ourselves because we've built a vector database. And I think there's magic in the ability to combine the two, for example, for privacy reasons and other stuff. So that is, I think, where things gets really excited for us in the next, in the next, in the near future to a degree, when it comes to doing it.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, next question. Given the increasing interest in the adoption of Elastic Stack in the market, how do you see the platform evolving to stay ahead of emerging trends and technology in the data and analytics space?
Yeah, I think to me as a technologist, and I deeply believe in innovation. So and then if you want to make sure that you stay quote unquote ahead, you want to make sure that you're continuously innovating. And I think there's many different ways to make sure that you're continuously innovating. For example, you can have great people that work at Elastic and they're smart and they're talented and they can help you see around corners and things along those lines. I think it's great and it's a good starting point. I think the fact that we're built upon open source, free and open, our amazing community that we have, our amazing and very passionate users, they help us also see around corners. Like we're not as smart as the smartness of all of our community. So sometimes I tell the team that we just need to be very good listeners and see what we're being used for, what we're being asked for, and then make sure that we address it and figure out how to prioritize it. Prioritization is always hard to do with limited resources and people. But make sure that we do that. I also think that we have, obviously I'm very passionate about search as an experience. So I think as a first principle of search, I think it's a wonderful way to try to continuously innovate. And you almost like see how a lot of what we do fall naturally into the experience of search, from just throw some data into Elasticsearch and search on it. The ability to visualize data very easily in Kibana, moving to observability and security, so the ability to search for performance bottlenecks or for security threats or for information in your workplace, and all the way to the previous question, which is like ChatGPT and search systems, right? It's like take large volumes of data, figuring out how to break it down into whether they're like inverted indexes or whether they're like arrays of floating point numbers, and then try to figure out how do you find the most relevant information for your users. So a lot of it is just very naturally fit into what we do, and just like continue to execute all the time. There's also an interesting aspect, because it's not enough to innovate, it's also important to communicate it well. So for example, even with all the work that we've done in vector database search, in contributing it to Lucene and exposing it in Elasticsearch and transformers and all of this, I don't think that we've talked about it as much. So there's a question like, if you don't talk about it and your community doesn't know that you do it, have you really innovated at all? So that's another part where I think we need to focus on and make sure that our user base know of all the things that we do. I think that's something that we need to rediscover a bit, and that's something that I care a lot about. And obviously now being back in the role of a CTO, and I have more time to make sure that we engage with the developer community and with our community next to innovating in various areas in at least when it comes to our tech and our products.
I just love how passionate you are about the community. I love it.
Yeah.
Can you kindly explain how Elastic Stack is able to integrate with a wide range of data sources and tools, and what type of architecture or design principles enable this flexibility?
Yeah, of course. So I think that obviously, I think one of the nice things, especially around Elasticsearch, is that the API hasn't changed that much. It's like index a JSON document, bulk upload a JSON document. The search API has been relatively consistent. It has evolved a lot over the years, but the conceptual structures are relatively consistent. So the APIs are easy to use and easy to generate. And that has been, I think, one of the reasons why Elasticsearch was successful in 2010 when it was first released. But then I think it's just the ecosystem around it. And when you try to think about it, I think what makes for such a large ecosystem to be developed around Elastic and Elasticsearch, I'm thinking about two things. The first part is search is just very useful. It's like you put data into it and almost immediately you see value. So it seems like worthwhile to integrate with Elasticsearch, because you know that if you throw logs at it, if you throw monitoring data at it, if you throw security events at it, if almost like any type of data, if you can, if you have an ETL system or an ELT system or what have you, and you have Elasticsearch as an output, if you put data into a queue, then from that queue, put it into Elasticsearch, like all of these things, putting data into a search system is an amplifier. It just produces a lot of value for not that much of effort, especially in the beginning. You see a lot of value out of it. I think the second part is just free and open source and all the things that we've done, our engagement with our community. We care a lot about users having a good time when it comes to using our products. We care a lot about the engagement with it. There's so much out there. And by the way, just, even now, obviously a rapidly evolving space is AI and everything around it with like LangChain and other stuff. And obviously we care a lot about the experience and the usage of those tools. So engaging with the community, making sure that it's being used in the right way, that's also extremely important. And then I think when you have all of these like components in the system and you put them together, it just creates an amazing ecosystem and tools. So I don't think there's like a single secret. It's not like I don't think if you have a great API, it's enough. I don't think if you only do open source, it's enough. If the tool that you put the data into it is not very useful, see what happened with Hadoop, for example. And I don't think so. It's like it has to come together, all of these ingredients. But when they do, then you see this amazing community and ecosystem of tools. By the way, one more thing, maybe not as important as the thing that I mentioned, but it's also important from our mindset, at least. Even if we end up embracing or developing tools, we don't mind other tools competing with our tools if they end up putting data in Elasticsearch. So, for example, we joined forces with Jordan in Logstash. That was amazing, and we invested in Logstash. We're totally happy with other tools that ship data into Elasticsearch, and we want to make them successful. And we don't view it as a zero-sum game. Like we don't view it as like if those tools succeed, then Logstash fails or something of those lines. The world is huge, and people fall in love with products for many different reasons. And we believe that if you put data at the end of the day, if the data is in Elasticsearch and we give you a great search experiences, that's when we're successful. That's when we enable you. So that's why afterwards we developed Beats, and now we have Agent and Fleet, and we heavily engage with the Open Telemetry project and Kafka and Airbyte and whatever. All of these tools are amazing, and we don't view it as if these tools are being used, then it's a problem for us. That makes sense.
Awesome. Yeah, it does make sense. Next question. What do you see as the biggest opportunities for Elastic in the coming years, and how do you plan to capitalize on them?
Yeah. So I think that sometimes when this question get asked, you feel like you have to come up with like new stuff. But I think to me, there's two anchors that we have at Elastic that if we keep them, I think that's a huge opportunity for us. And I think the first one is focusing on search experiences, on our focus on speed, scale, and relevance, on just search experience. To me, it represents so much. And if we keep on focusing on that, on the core simplicity of it, the value to the user, the ability to really have, when you put a search box in front of someone, they immediately know what needs to be done. Whether you end up typing something in natural language process or something else and what have you, like it's a very natural way for users to do it. And then you can overlay on top of it different other experiences, obviously. I think the other one is make sure that we continuously invest and maintain our developer community. So the roots in free, openness, trust, community. If we have these two things, I feel great because they're very fundamental to our success as a company. I feel a lot of responsibility to maintain them, and I think that if just maintaining them is a huge opportunity for us. I think beyond that, I like to think about what we do in terms, at least in terms of product development, on two layers. The first one is almost like our search platform, Elasticsearch platform, right? It's like Elasticsearch and generic ways to visualize data and within that continuously innovate and keep on getting better and better and better. Elasticsearch was very lightweight 10 years ago in how it worked, how it started up, things along those lines. We have to continuously progress it, architect it to the way that the systems are being built today, make sure that we take and challenge the current architecture, the current way of how things work, and keep making it better and relevant with the progress that technology is making. For example, we're working on stateless Elasticsearch and decoupling compute from storage to make it more lightweight and easily manageable and resilient and everything that comes with that. So no more master nodes and no more having to worry about copies of data locally and things along those lines, and easily ramp up on compute when storage is around and things along those lines. So it's when you have like remote like blob storage like S3 or others. And next to it, I think continuously make the search platform relevant. So it's not only about returning relevant results, but making sure that it's relevant. So, over the past 2 years, we invested in transformers and better relevancy and ranking models. Some of them powered by machine learning, some of them not, because you don't always have to have it. It depends on the use case. So make sure that we continuously invest in these areas. So that's one aspect that I think is very important. Then the other one on the product side is whichever solution we decide to pursue. So how do I think about solution? I think about, the platform is the foundation and it's being used to do fraud analysis and just amazing use cases. We saw that we're being used like unproportionately so in logging and then observability, application performance monitoring, infrastructure monitoring, things along those lines, in security, especially in the context of SIEM. So take all of the data that you have, treat it as security events, and then try to do threat hunting. And then on top of that, cloud security and endpoint security and things along those lines. And in like old school enterprise search, which is like, go and crawl internal websites and document systems and Salesforce and things along those lines, and take all of that data together and make it searchable from a single place. So these solutions have to be great. Like we won't get into the observability market if we don't think that we can be one of the top 3, regardless of Elasticsearch. We think it gives us, a significant advantage. But like we want to be one of the top 3 observability vendors out there. We build our security capabilities to be one of the top 3 security vendors out there, right? So it's like that's something that we want to make sure that we're there for our users that bet on the technology, that have bet on the technology before even it was called a solution. So I think that that's another one that is very important, at least to us, to make sure that we build the best products possible. One of them is kind of like the platform, the Elasticsearch platform is take it and, you're limited by your imagination around what you can do with it. And then the solutions are more packaged and more like the best SIEM out there, or the best logging solution out there that start to add like use case specific features and capabilities. And it's been impressive to see the maturity of our solutions. Like it's really humbling to see how well we execute there as well.
So the next question, I think, definitely puts you in a spot. What new features or enhancement can we expect in the future releases of Elasticstack, and how do you prioritize which features to work on first?
So there's so much. I'll focus maybe on the more fundamental one for a second, or areas that I've at least been I've been working on more, at least on my end. So the first one, and I mentioned it before, what we call stateless Elasticsearch. So take Elasticsearch, the way that it works, and decouple compute from storage. And there's a whole talk that I gave in a meetup in Paris, for example, if you wanna look at it. But that's probably the biggest architecture change that we've ever done at Elasticsearch. And it's huge, and we're working on it now. It's very promising, the progress that we're making, but it's a huge project. And I think that's something that I'm excited about, because to a degree, like this is how I would write Elasticsearch if I was sitting down and writing it today. So to me, it means that we're keeping it up to date with the technology space, and we're making sure that we're there for our users, that rely on this technology, not only with how well it has done over the last 10 years, but in the next 10 years. That, I think, is one thing that I get excited about. We have another very exciting feature I'm very excited about. It's called ESQL, the Elasticsearch query language. It has nothing to do with SQL. The Elasticsearch query language. That's another feature that I'm very excited about. It's the first time that we're going to have a query engine in Elasticsearch. So if you think about it, the way that search has been executed today is that we pushed search to run next to where the data is and run the queries and everything, using Apache Lucene and using Elasticsearch code, got back the responses, and then we reduced it in a very naive, there's some smarts in it, but it's like, it's not, rocket science. And then send back the results. With ESQL, we're going to have a real query engine in Elasticsearch. Think Trino or Spark or other tools, like something similar to that. And I think that query engine, in the beginning, we're just building the foundation now. So that query engine will allow us to do a lot of interesting things with the data that you have, that will provide users with much more flexibility. That query engine will have a language that is very simple to use. It's pipe-based systems. It has been very popular through Unix and Splunk and many other query languages. It's just very natural for users. It's going to feel very natural for threat hunters, for DevOps and SRE people, all the way to developers that build search systems. So that query language, I think, is also going to be very, very useful for search applications. But then in the future, we can do much more with that query engine. For example, we can do lookups much easier. We can do joins. We can do piping. We can do transformation. A lot of munging and working with data in a much more efficient way. That those are asks that we've had for years at Elasticsearch, and they've been very hard to implement because we never had a query engine in Elasticsearch. So we're going to have now a proper query engine in Elasticsearch. So to me, like that's another feature that I'm very excited about. All the work that we're doing around generative AI, vector database, new ranking systems, there's a lot of innovation that we're doing. The team is on fire there for the past 2 years, running transformers. So this is another thing that we're I'm very, very excited about all the progress that we're doing in this space. And then being able to take all of that work, all of this work, all of this like relevancy engine to a degree that we've been using or building, and expose it through our solutions or as a building block for all of our users out there that use Elasticsearch directly. That's another obviously new capability that we're developing that I'm super, super excited about. And then just like the solutions that we develop, there's I think there's a lot of work that we can do when it comes to, for example, just onboarding logs and making it easy, being able to apply AI, what is called like AI ops and things along those lines, using our existing tools in our stack to better understand what works and what doesn't. I'm really excited about working more with OpenTelemetry. We just contributed the Elastic Common Schema to OpenTelemetry, and we're engaging heavily with it. And I love OpenTelemetry as a concept, and we want to contribute and help our users benefit from it more and more and more, both in observability and security. I think in security, there's a lot of we're a very open system, and it's not common in security. If that makes sense. You can see all of our rules. You can see how things are implemented. We publish everything through the Elastic Security Labs that we have. There's a lot of amazing people that work in our security team that build a pretty impressive security product. And I'm really excited about doing all of that in the open with our community. I think that that's something that has been missing in the security space. That I'm excited about giving it a try and trying to make it happen there. That's it. I'll pause here. There's a lot more. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. Yeah.
Well, the next question is similar to one that you already answered. So I don't know if you have anything additional to say or.
No, I agree. It seems very similar. It's like emerging threads and technologies. I think I've answered it in 2 questions ago or something.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Please tell us about the basic policy regarding AI in Elasticstack product strategy.
Yeah, I've read that question. I'm not sure what the question means by policy. So first of all, we don't. If the policy is around like whether we're developing an AI and how do we train it and how do we think about it and things along those lines, we don't do that. So it's not like policy that you would apply to things like OpenAI or others and how they're doing the training and making sure that there's like proper alignment and what is alignment in the training model that we have, things along those lines. It's less relevant to us. We're building the building blocks that allows for others to use trained models and run them. We do use ML in various areas, but I don't think that policy applies to it that much. For example, we're obviously training MLs to find anomaly detections or categorization or classification of logs, rate changes. We're building ML to try to find security threats. So if the policy is around, how do we develop them or something along those lines, again, like this is not necessarily something that we do. And obviously a lot of the work is in free and open. So at least that's how it works now.
Please inform us about the release timeline and roadmap for ESQL and ESS serverless.
Yeah, so those are 2 very big projects, and I always struggle with saying like an exact date or something on those lines. I hope that we will have a preview release of ESQL within 6 to 9 months, maybe a bit sooner. It won't be fully featured. It won't have all the commands that you would want to execute. It won't have joins. It won't have lookups maybe or things on those lines. But it will be there for people to start to use it and experience it. And we want to release early and often, so we can get the product out and get the product out as soon as possible and make it better by engaging our community of users. ESS serverless, so that's like our serverless efforts on cloud. They are going to be built on top of stateless Elasticsearch. So we have some internal, very ambitious milestones, but don't expect it to be anything meaningful in the coming year, for example. So, you know, we're still focused on trying to build stateless Elasticsearch. So far, it's been going well. We've managed to decouple compute from storage for shards, for searches. We've managed to implement stateless masters on top of blob store, and we just managed to move the transaction log. Yeah, I'm getting technical, but we'll move the transaction log to use blob store. So we're slowly moving all the state from being local to S3, obviously with caching, but there's like a lot of work beyond it. We're coming up with new concepts around how do you easily control the power that you want to give to search or to indexing, easily say out of all the data that you have, which part needs to be interactive versus not, to be able to control costs, smart caching systems with that in mind. And then on top of stateless Elasticsearch, which is again like a significant change just in the architecture of Elasticsearch, there's all of the serverless work that we want to do. So moving to run completely on Kubernetes based on our ECK. So we're using something that all of you can go and use now, the Elastic Cloud on Kubernetes, ECK. So it's an operator. By the way, I think we just merged the ability to run Logstash on ECK. I know that has been a highly requested feature, so that I'm excited about that. So we're gonna, move to run this like serverless infrastructure on top of ECK, on top of Kubernetes, decouple some services that we have, and make sure that they're running well in an efficient way. So there's a lot of work that goes into the serverless stuff, and I won't expect it necessarily this year. Obviously, our existing cloud offering is very capable. It handles petabytes of data for customers like at this size. They've been very successful. But once it's ready, again, we will release it as quickly as possible and start to iterate on it, and move from there.
Well, I think the next question you also answered about Elastic goals and solutions, what we focus on, unless you have anything to add.
No.
Okay.
No.
GPT was big on the questions. Considering the collaboration between GPT and search engines, PyCon may be a candidate, but we want to use Elasticsearch instead. Please tell us if there's a roadmap for strengthening Elasticsearch as a vector database.
Yeah, so you can use Elasticsearch today as a vector database. So we worked over the past 2 years to contribute vector capabilities into Apache Lucene and expose it in Elasticsearch. Has been a lot of work on our end, and sometimes others wanted to do other things outside of Apache Lucene, like the open search products and what have you, but we took the time and invested because we believe that one of the amazing things in Apache Lucene is how well it has evolved over the years, moving from, inverted index implementations to more advanced data structures and things like that. So there's vector database implementation now in Elasticsearch and in Apache Lucene that you can go and use. In Elasticsearch itself, there's also the ability to run transformers. You can use it instead of Pinecone. We just need to talk more about it, and make sure that the defaults are the right ones, because out of the box, sometimes it's slower than it can be. So we need to work on the defaults and the out of the box experience as well. But it's extremely capable, and obviously we're making significant investments there to make it better and better and better, both on the Apache Lucene level and at the Elasticsearch level.
This seems to be a tough question. When considering GPT, the current number of dimensions available in Elasticsearch seems insufficient. we would like to know if there are any plans to address this issue.
Yeah. So I think I know where it's coming from, because I think if you want to write an open AI plugin, you need to have you need to support a certain amount of dimensions, and out of the box, Apache Lucene has a hard limit on the number of dimensions. I think it's, by the way, we've tried to have obviously open source, and you try to have discussions and contributions and influence about changing that limit in Apache Lucene. There has been resistance to it. By the way, technically, the resistance is sound. Like, there's no need to have this many dimensions in an embeddings or a model. But what we've done in Elasticsearch, because we know it stops people from actually just being able to write an OpenAI plugin or something like that, is that we've changed that hard code limit to a higher value in the recent Elasticsearch release. So you can go ahead and use it. Again, like most of the times that we've seen it, actually the only time that we've seen it for this amount of dimensions has been the OpenAI embeddings one, which is different than many of the other embeddings that you have that don't require this amount of dimensions. That makes sense.
So is Elastic going to implement voice search as well?
We don't have plans to do it. So I think the best bet on trying to do voice search is to use any of the existing voice to text APIs that you have out there, and then take that text and put it into Elasticsearch.
Makes sense. Does Elastic plan to launch a certification in cybersecurity focusing on its security solutions?
I'm curious. So I think you mean like maybe we will train you and give you a certificate that you're like a certified Elastic security specialist or something along those lines. We have certifications for Elasticsearch itself. It's a good question. I actually don't know the answer. So I need to ask our training team. I know that we're investing a lot in our security training. I don't think we have a certification around it, but I actually don't also know the plans if we plan to have a certification. So I need to get back to you on that one.
It's good that the community is interested in getting Elastic certified, I think.
I love it. I think that this, I've been engaging with open source for years, and I think it's a badge of honor to be able to be certified with technologies, especially technologies that you enjoy using. And I've had many of these over the years, and it's very humbling to hear people wanting to have it with not only with Elasticsearch, but also with Elastic Security and others.
Absolutely, yeah. Elasticsearch was created to help you to solve a specific situation in your personal life. I would like to know, do you continue to use Elasticsearch in your personal life or just for business? If the answer is yes, personal use, I would love to know.
Yeah, so the story of how I got into search, and it was around Compass, which was the predecessor to Elasticsearch, was that I tried to build a recipe app for my wife, and I tried to implement search, and then and then I just stopped at search basically, and it progressed to. Actually, I never implemented that recipe app. So to be like the frank, honest answer is that I've never used it on my personal life, as in like it's a recipe app or something like that. I obviously I use Elasticsearch, I program it, I play with it, but not at that level. I think the thing that I'm excited about is that like almost everywhere I see Elasticsearch, when you go and search on OpenTable for a restaurant, it's powered by Elasticsearch. When you book a ride in Uber, when you search on Wikipedia, when you and to me, like I'm using Elasticsearch all the time in my personal life, just by indirection.
True. Yeah, this is actually how I explain to non-technical people. But I'm like, well, when you type something on Netflix, you don't want to take 10 minutes for the search to bring. So
Yes.
that's why I'm like, oh my God, so your company does that? So yeah. How would stateless Elasticsearch address some of the challenges of the current Elasticsearch architecture?
Yeah, so I spoke a bit about it before. So the the benefits of stateless Elasticsearch is decoupling compute from storage. And that's a really tough thing to do for a search engine, by the way. So you see columnar store databases and other systems decouple compute from storage, but a search engine it's not easy, and I won't get into it right now, but it's a pretty complicated implementation. And obviously, stateless Elasticsearch, it's not only about, as I mentioned, just the data structures that you use to power search, whether they're inverted indexes or whether they are BKD trees for numeric search or geo search, or whether they're vector database or other stuff. It's about the distributed nature of the system and moving master nodes to be quote unquote stateless and use the blob store as a coordination mechanism, or moving the transaction log of Elasticsearch and things along those lines. I think one of the important thing, and I'll use like very simply in a almost like a way of how it should feel. Elasticsearch needs to feel much more lightweight. So if you look at distributed systems that we developed 10, 12 years ago, Elasticsearch felt very lightweight. Like you started shards, you started nodes, shards would get allocated and move around. You had 2 or 3 copies of the data and they would be stored locally. If you started another node, shards will automatically transfer to it while you were searching and while you were indexing. Master nodes would get elected automatically, resiliency, things along those lines. But things were lightweight for 12 years ago, but they were still heavy in a sense of you relied on the local storage to work. So you kind of like coupled compute with storage. So if you had load on the system and you wanted to start up another node or add another machine to the cluster to add more compute to be able to search faster, it also meant moving storage around. If you lost a machine or if you wanted to downscale the system, again, like you removed it and then things will have to go and replicate again, things on those lines, because you had to make sure that you keep the right amount of copies of data within the cluster itself, within the compute infrastructure that you have. Decoupling compute from storage means that we're basically moving the responsibility of long-term storage to something like a blob store. So S3, Azure Blob Store, Amazon AWS S3, or Google Cloud Store, and things like that. And then we focus on making sure that we work out of the box with them the right way, and that's not straight. It is not straightforward at all. And then the compute part just sits there, and it's almost like it's much easier for it to go away because you don't lose any data. You don't have to move data around. Now, there's going to be advanced caching aspects, obviously going on. Only working with no cache on top of something like S3, it's going to be slow and it's going to be very expensive. So you want to make sure that you're caching. Some use cases require less caching. For example, if you're storing audit logs for 10 years, you don't need that much cache because it doesn't get a lot of query requests. But other systems like, I don't know, as you type search in an e-commerce website, you might want to have everything cached out of the box. But things are still lightweight because even if everything goes away, the whole cluster goes away, the data is still there, the up-to-date data is still there on S3, and then you can just start up the cluster or start up a few nodes or start up compute and immediately start to do searches for it. So I think that's a big aspect of how stateless Elasticsearch works, and that makes me very, very excited. By the way, 2 things that I would add to it: it works very nicely with the SQL. So having a query engine that understands about how to query things efficiently, especially when it goes and queries sometimes against S3 or not based on caches, like having smarts in the query engine is almost like something that you have to have with a stateless Elasticsearch. And that's very exciting. And the second part that I would say, and that's a bit of a mind bend, if you will. One of the nice things about Elasticsearch and Apache Lucene is that by default, we index everything. Sometimes people don't realize it, but it's like you have 50 fields or 50 fields in JSON or something on those lines. we can index all those 50 fields, and the overhead will not be that much. Like imagine having a database table with 50 columns and indexing every single column. Like this would explode storage and will be super heavy and almost like unmaintainable. But we can index everything by default and make use of these indexes. Like that's the exciting part. Obviously, different type of indexes, columnar store, BKD trees, vector storage, things along those lines. And because we index everything, the funny thing is that maybe it explodes the data a bit more. It's like 1.3, 1.4 for each byte that you put in. You index everything significantly, then it can get to 1.2, 1.3, for example. That is not that expensive with cheap storage on S3, for example, but it makes access extremely fast. So instead of having to scan all the data, if you don't hit a column that is indexed, because everything is indexed by default. And by the way, again, you can turn it off. You can decide to only index 2 fields. That's not a problem. And it's so efficient. Actually, the access on something like S3 is going to be much more efficient, and you won't have to like scan the whole data to try to find something. So it means that searches on S3 are going to be much faster in this architecture, and that I think is an advantage that we have as a search system compared to other technologies that have decoupled compute from storage, and they have to suffer through slower response times and more expensive interactions because of that. That scanning suddenly means that you access S3 all the time versus doing it locally or things like that. So that's like, to me, that stateless / decoupling compute from storage really makes the architecture of a search engine even more relevant and even more impressive, to me at least, compared to how it is today. And that's extremely exciting.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
We know that we can load trained models into Elasticsearch, but we still have to train those models outside Elasticsearch. Is there any plan to train models directly from Elastic Stack?
Not currently. We're talking about some of these things, but the current focus is to make sure that we're the best vector database out there next to all the other data structures that we have. And you can actually not only the best or a great database, vector database out there, but also a great search platform out there. It's like that also have vector database. And then the ability to easily import models, for example, from Hugging Face, as I mentioned, or other places. Training, there's a lot of different ways and different frameworks and systems and GPUs and what have you. And I think this is an area that maybe in the future we'll want to figure out how do we do it and how do we enable it. But at least for now, for the next short term, at least, we're focusing on what I just said. I think eventually we would want to have an easy button that says, take all of my data that you have in Elasticsearch and train something out of it. But maybe we decide to partner or allow you to have a plugin system that goes and train it in another place and then comes back. Whether we take the training implementation ourselves or something like that, that's not something that I know now how we're going to do it.
Cool. And the last question, historically, Elasticsearch has strong connections to the open source community. As a busy CTO, do you still find time to contribute to the open source ecosystem? If so, are there any projects out of there that particularly excite you?
I don't contribute as much as I used to. I still code, but because I can't commit as much to coding as in like a longer stretch of times because I'm running around and doing a lot of other things. I mostly code and dabble with technology to stay up to date, and that's where I focus my efforts. So, for example, I will play around with OpenTelemetry just to understand how the implementation is and what the capabilities are and things along those lines. versus saying, okay, there's a feature missing in OpenTelemetry. I'm going to spend the next week developing it, just so I can help Elastic build a better strategy around how do we participate in this community. That's where I mostly focus, to be completely honest. I think that, and maybe I'm on the more like strict side of the house of open source, but I feel a lot of responsibility for things that I contribute or develop in open source. I want to be there when there's a bug. I want to be available to fix it. I want to be available to help educate people around it. That was what I did with Compass. That was what I did with Elasticsearch for many years. Maybe I need to relax on that part and say, okay, like maybe I can write just some code, contribute it, and then other people can take that and move forward. But mentally, I think I need to evolve maybe in that area.
Okay, so we are done with those questions.
Awesome.
It's amazing to see how passionate you are and how inspiring you are when you talk about Elastic. I hope this session was inspiring to all the community members as it was for me.
It was great.
Thank you so much for your time again. I don't know if you have any few words to say to our community members.
No, thank you, everybody. I'm excited, and thank you for using our products, and hopefully we'll continue to do this often.
Yes, and the next cycle, the 2024 contributor program is open, so I invite you to keep contributing and making this community as awesome as it is. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you, Shay.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Bye.